Wednesday, May 13th, 2020 meeting of the Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission. This meeting is being recorded and is public, but we are all participating from remote sites. The Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission and staff welcome you to tonight's meeting. Due to the governor's proclamation relating to the conduct of public meetings during COVID-19 crisis, the meeting will be broadcast and the public is not allowed to attend in person. Citizens wishing to comment on business on the agenda are encouraged to communicate with the commission by email in order to respect social distancing protocol. Please note that Planning and Zoning Commission meetings are televised, videotaped, and/or recorded. Thank you for your interest in city government. So with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order, beginning with agenda item 1, approval of the minutes from, believe it or not, March 11th, 2020. Do I hear any additions, deletions, corrections to the minutes? Is everybody, okay, I need everybody to unmute here for a second.
To approve.
Okay, so Rob moves to approve. I believe that's who I heard.
Second, please.
Second, I see Dennis raising his hand, so I'll say Dennis second. Probably somebody else did also. Anyway, all in favor, please unmute and give a vocal reply. Or maybe we should just do by hand. That might be easier, then you can stay muted. Okay, all approving of the minutes, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. So I believe that's everyone who, Nels, we can't tell with you. Could you give a vocal response? Because we're not seeing you. I don't think Nels hears me. Nels, can you hear me? Have you unmuted? Okay. Well, what should I do, Mike? Just proceed with the people who were able to affirm.
Yeah, he could just abstain since we didn't hear what his vote was.
We couldn't, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I believe we had Victoria, myself, Rich, Rob, Joel, Dennis approve, correct? And Mike, I can't see you either, and you're muted. So do you also
I said
approve?
aye. I said
Aye.
aye.
Okay, thank you.
That was me.
It was hard to figure out who's who. Okay, so thank you, Mike. Okay, any opposed? But seeing none, hearing none, we will. The minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 2, the proposed RV park at 913 West Palouse River Drive. And it's a proposal for a recreational vehicle park located within the existing Palouse Hills Mobile Home Park at 913 West Palouse River Drive. And Mike will begin the presentation on that. Michael Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just bring up the PowerPoint here. Should be able to see my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
Yep.
So this is a proposal to allow RV spaces within an existing mobile home park. It's Palouse Hills Mobile Home Park located at 913 West Palouse River Drive. There's currently 33 sites within the park. There are a number of sites that are challenging to accommodate mobile homes, but would be suitable for RV spaces. The applicant became more involved in management of the park in 2015. It's been in the process of improving it and cleaning it up. The applicants indicated that there are about 10 spaces in the park that would be targeted for either tiny homes or possibly RVs. It's the subject property. Palouse River Drive to the north of it provides access here, primarily a residential neighborhood here to the north. Anderson Frontier Park is up there as well. This is ITD's service yard to the east. And then there's the Palouse River Drive ball fields that are owned by the city of Moscow directly to the west. And this purple line here represents the city limits boundary, and the South Fork of the Palouse River runs through the southwestern corner of this property. So Palouse Hills was first established in 1970s. It's currently 3.94 acres in size, contains a looped access drive, 33 spaces. Those range between about 30 feet wide to 50 to 70 feet deep. The zoning of this property is in the motor business zone. So that's the light shade of blue you see here, as well as ITD service yard. R1 is low density, single family residential here to the north. R3 is medium density, and R4 is multifamily as well. And then the park property is in the farm ranch zone. So take a look at the motor business zone according to the zoning code. It's really just intended to provide for the location and grouping of these compatible uses, primarily involving the automobile. And then the city intends to concentrate these uses to increase public convenience when utilizing such services and to allow activities to render the maximum service. And RV parks are permitted use within the MD zone, but they do require review and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that brings us here today. This is actually a site plan that was submitted early on. This is when the park was first established in the 1970s. This just shows largely unchanged access with a circular one-way drive. I believe it's running in this direction and looping up through, egressing out. But I don't believe there's been any change with the number of spaces within the park since that time. There is a multifamily structure here to the northwest of the development, but you can see the largely unchanged access drive that loops through. Largely the same number of mobile homes that were in place when it first became a mobile home park, and then the South Fork of the Palouse River here to the southwest. There is a green open space area here to the northeast corner. And so these are photos submitted by the applicant. This is space 22. No, that's not a tiny home or a mobile home. I believe that's just a trailer with some type of structure on it. And this is just a view from kind of near the access drive from Palouse River Drive, looking to the southwest. This is the city park property here to the west, and there's a couple vacant open spaces there. So this is from the access drive looking to the west. You can see a couple of those open spaces there. This is space 32. The view from Palouse River Drive, looking south. This is the multifamily. I believe it's a fourplex structure at the entry of the home park. So just a review of the mobile home park standard, or the RV park standards, excuse me. So size of RV spaces have to be 40 by 20, but 40% of those can be a minimum of 25 by 20. Applicants indicated, like I mentioned before, that the majority of the spaces are at least 30 feet wide and range between 50 to 70 feet in depth. So that exceeds that standard. Separation, they need to be at least 10 feet apart. All those spaces would meet the 10-foot requirement. Sanitary facilities, required toilet facilities and potable water shall be provided. So this just applies really to campgrounds and all RV parks that allow tents. So it doesn't apply in this circumstance. Open space, really up to the discretion of the owner, but there are a couple areas, like I had mentioned before, in the northeast corner, as well as an area, riparian area along the South Fork of the Palouse River, which traverses that property in the southwest corner. Refuse collection isn't an issue. There's individual roll carts that Latah Sanitation comes by and picks up weekly. And then the street system for internal traffic, 28 feet wide, which includes a 20-foot surface and 4-foot shoulders. That's for two-way streets. And then for one-way, it'd be 20, including a 12-foot surface and 4-foot shoulders with a minimum of 3/4 inch processed rock, 6 inches depth. Then the minimum outside radius needs to be at least 40 feet. So the existing park is paved with approximately 30-foot wide internal streets designated as one-way, which exceeds the minimum requirement for street standards. And then all the corners in the loop exceed the 40-foot outside radius as well. Utilities, it's already served by city sewer and water. And so part of the code states that if the preliminary plans are found to be in substantial compliance with requirements for final plans, the commission may waive the final plan review on this. And being the simplicity of this application and how the park's already established, staff would recommend that the commission approve the RV park proposal for Palouse Hills Mobile Home Park and waive the final plan review. And I'd certainly be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay, I guess
they're not really asking for anything. They're not really asking for anything like special, right? It's already there, and they exceed everything that they're required to do, right? I mean, looks like the spaces are plenty big. The space between them are the 10 foot. I mean, that's right. So they're really not asking for anything special, right? They're just sort of getting a permit. Is that the way I understand it?
They're just asking to be allowed to have RVs within their mobile home park is essentially what we're asking for. So ever since we did the amendment and we loosened the standards for RVs and manufactured home and mobile parks, they're just following up on that in order to allow recreational vehicles. We lifted, the commission recommended and council approved eliminating the 6-month stay limitation. And so there's that they can stay there year round and there's no stay limitation. And so this is just following up on that action by the commission before. And it's similar to what Mr. Lester had requested to the east of this property at 603 Palouse River Drive in his mobile home park. So they're just following up on that amendment.
So, Mike, we will be looking at these types of allowances case by case in the future as well. I mean, since we lifted the stay limit, we'll continue to look at them still individually. That's just a general question.
Yeah, we'll just have to, since they were never approved to have RVs in the past, the commission will just have to look at these on a case basis as they come forward and request allowance of RVs in their park. There may be some that may not choose to allow tiny homes or RVs in their parks. And that's certainly their right, but yeah, it'll just be on a case-by-case basis for the commission to review.
So you're asking us in a sense to expedite the process by only if we approve of the preliminary layout that we just go ahead and not require further review of the plat, correct? Yeah. Yeah,
there's typically a preliminary review and a final review.
Right. So
but that's typically assuming that you're starting from scratch and there's no mobile home park or RV park currently in existence. It's a raw piece of land and they're going to develop it from the ground up. Typically you would look at it preliminarily and maybe the commission has conditions they want placed on the approval of the preliminary park request. And so in this case, it's already existing and the spaces are already there. So I really don't see any need for 2 reviews.
Right. So I guess where I'm heading is, oh, yes, Rob, go ahead. You need to unmute though. Yeah.
Yeah, this was the park, and the gentleman that owns the park brought the RV issue to us to begin with. So we've actually looked at his plans and talked with him extensively. So I don't have any issue moving forward with it. And when you're done taking questions, I certainly would move to approve both the proposal and the waiver of the final review.
Okay, I'm entertaining further questions, and I can't see Mike and I can't see Nell, so you might have to talk instead. But anyone else? Yes, Victoria.
Well, this is not the same one we did before. It's the one next door to it. But this is what we set the whole thing up for, to loosen the restrictions so that these people could come on forward with these existing mobile home parks. So there's no need for a final review, and this is what we were looking for, so we should move forward.
So I guess at this point, if there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve this this proposal and to waive further review. Yes, Dennis.
I would make a motion that we approve the RV park proposal and waive the final plan review.
Thank you. Unless you think that needs to be done in two motions, Mike, does it need to be done? No? Okay, great. Is there a second to Dennis's motion? Nels, we see you now.
I'm finally here.
Okay, so is there, okay. Victoria, are you?
Seconding.
Okay, so all in favor, please raise your hand and we'll hear a voice from those who can't. Okay, so it's, I believe unanimous, except for I can't see Mike Nelson. I lost him somewhere. I can't hear him. And Mike, do you approve? Okay, oh, there's a lot of feedback for some reason right now.
I think we lost him, so he'll have to abstain on that as well.
Okay, so I believe that we have a unanimous approval, correct? Okay, opposed? Anybody opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so motion approved. And thank you on that one. All right, so we move on to agenda item number 3, proposed RV park at 713 Brent Drive. A similar project, a proposal for a recreational vehicle RV park located within the existing Bluebird Mobile Home Park at 713 Brent Drive. And so Mike will present.
I assume you can see my screen again?
Yes.
Excellent. So I think someone's going to have to mute their microphone. I think it was Nels maybe that joined. You hear echoes. So this is a similar proposal to the one you just heard. This is 713 Brent Drive. This is Bluebird Mobile Home Park. So they have essentially the same proposal to allow RV spaces within the existing mobile home park. There are approximately 23 sites within Bluebird. There are a number of sites that are a little bit challenging to accommodate mobile homes. They would like to allow the flexibility to allow RV spaces. And so this is Bluebird here. Previously was Loney's trailer court, which I believe is what it originally was constructed as. So you can see Brent Drive here off of Main Street provides the access to the north. There is a one-way loop through this site. And there's also another access off of Morton to the south there that's just directly off your screen. Looking at the area to the west, there are some self-storage units here. And then to the east are primarily commercial uses, Norm's Glass. There's a veterinary clinic. There's a building used by Moscow Building Supply. Carpet Mill, and then there's Redinger's here to the northeast. Along Brent Drive to the north are primarily single-family and two-family dwellings. And to the south is an electrical contractor as well as a woodworking business. So this was first established as Loney's in the 1970s. It's currently about 2.5 acres in size, contains the one-way looped access drive. Those spaces, like with the other ones, were constructed in the 70s, so they range between 50 to 70 feet deep, but they are all at least 30 feet in width. Looking at the zoning in the area, like the last application, it's in the motor business zone. There are some properties within Robinson Mobile Home Park to the west that are in the multifamily zone, which is R4. The majority of those properties along Brent Drive are in the R3, which is medium density residential zoning district. So we had just looked at this at the last presentation, so we won't go through those couple of paragraphs. And then the RV parks are permitted with motor business, but subject to review of the commission. This was the original, I think, site plan that was submitted, showing a layout unchanged since it was first constructed in the 1970s. So you can see the access loop here going in this direction and loops back around. And then here's a couple, and these photos are a number of years old from Google Street View. And this is just heading north up the eastern portion of the loop. And then this is looking to the southwesterly direction. The loop ends up going around here and then circling around and then coming back out on Brent Drive. So just a review of the standards again, looking at the minimum size required. Like I'd indicated, they do meet that. Separations 10 feet, and they meet that as well. And then sanitary facilities, they're not proposing any self-contained units, so this one doesn't apply. And then the open space, really up to the discretion of the applicant. But, you know, like I mentioned before, this park is about 50 years old and they're pretty much locked in. There's minimal open space that is currently within the park unless you were to take out some spaces that are used for mobile or manufactured homes or potentially RVs would be the only opportunity to allow additional open space other than what's minimally there. Refuse collection is collected via LSI, so it meets that requirement. And then the streets, in this circumstance, it's a one-way street. And so the standard for one-way would be the 20 feet, which includes a 12-foot surface and then 4-foot shoulders on either side. And then that's only required to be gravel. So the current street is paved and it is 12 feet in width, but it does have gravel shoulders on either side. So it meets that dimensional standard as well as the 40-foot outside radius requirement. And then all utilities currently hooked up to city sewer and water. So we have satisfactory conditions there. And with that, you know, like I mentioned before, we can consolidate the preliminary and the final reviews. And staff recommends that we do that, and the commission approve the RV space proposals at 713 Brent Drive. And I believe the applicants are here to answer any questions as well, but I could certainly try to answer any questions you might have also.
All right, okay, thank you, Mike. Are there any questions for either Mike or the applicants from any commission members? I don't see any hands going up. I don't hear anybody, so I'm assuming there aren't any questions. Joel, you look like you want to. Yes.
My question is, are we also being asked to waive the second consideration?
I believe so. Is that correct?
Yep.
So any thoughts, any concerns, or should we entertain a motion to approve and also to waive the second review, the final review? Do I hear a motion? Yes, Rob?
Move to approve the proposal for Bluebird Mobile Home Park and to waive final review.
Okay.
Second by Mike Nelson.
Thank you, Mike. I hear you and I can't see you. Thank you. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? No? Barring none, no abstentions. Okay. The motion carries with unanimous approval. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item 4, preliminary development review of 201 West 6th Street, the flat iron development, and I believe Mike Ray will give a presentation on that.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is the preliminary development review for the Flatiron development at 201 West 6th Street. This is the southwest corner of 6th and Jackson, the URA's property. So the proposals for what we're referring to as the Flatiron development. It's a 29,000 square foot, 3-story mixed use building, and then a 2,300 square foot, 2-story commercial building, also on the same property. The 3-story building, the first floor contains 4 proposed commercial tenant spaces, one of a little over 5,000 square feet, one of about 826, one of 492, and one of a little over 1,100 square feet in size. The second floor would be proposed a cooperative, like a co-work area with 17 private offices and a conference room, and then a sky bridge that connects to the smaller 2-story building. And then the third floor would propose to have 12 one-bedroom/studio apartments and a space for a potential restaurant with rooftop patio. The 2-story building, first floor, would have 790 square feet of commercial space with a restroom. And then the second floor would have a similar amount of same footprint for the commercial space with access to the sky bridge. In total, the site would have 25 parking spaces in the parking lot, and it would also include the extension of Hello Walk. So this is the subject property. Southwest corner of 6th and Jackson, like I mentioned before. 6th Street is here to the north. Jackson Street running pretty much to the south with 3 southbound lanes. This is the Silos property to the south, and then University Point to the west, Moscow Ale House here to the northwest, and Jimmy John's strip mall here to the north. So just to review, this property is in Legacy Crossing. It's within the urban mixed commercial zoning district. So the underlying zone really regulates the uses and the bulk and dimensional requirements. And then there also is the Legacy Crossing Overlay District, which is layered on top of the zoning district. It's really created a review process for development within the Legacy Crossing overlay area. And it really is the mechanism for implementing design guidelines that the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council a number of years ago implemented for Legacy Crossing. So the guidelines were intended to make sure redevelopment is consistent with the community's vision of that area, really bridging continuation of downtown over to the university was essentially the vision. So this is straight out of the design guidelines. You can see the purpose and intent of the Legacy Crossing design guidelines. So it goes through consideration of the unique characteristics of this area. Redevelopment of the area requires an increased level of attention and consideration of site ingress and egress, architectural style, placement and massing, public streetscape design and function, internal vehicular and pedestrian circulation, parking provision and management, preservation and enhancement of riparian areas, and the integration of public community spaces, public art, and other public enhancements. So these guidelines are really intended to complement the city's zoning code and the urban mixed commercial zoning district by establishing these standards and guidelines for developments within Legacy Crossing. So these guidelines are to be utilized by staff, the commission, and city council in their review of all proposals within this area. And of course, the overlay is within the area shown on the map here, outlined in blue. So Paradise Creek really flanks it here to the west with the university. We've got 95 that comes up to the south couplet. And of course, this is Jackson Street here to the east, and then 6th Street to the north, with College Street pretty much bisecting it through the middle of the district. So all items within the document are really intended to be guidelines. So there are minor deviations or variations that are allowed by the commission where they're justified by specific limitations or constraints of the development site, whether it be project layout, and where such variations and deviations do not conflict with the intents and purposes of the guidelines. So there is intended to be some flexibility built in with the design guidelines in the review. So just to review the review process, initially there's a pre-application meeting. And then there's the preliminary development review, which is the stage we're at now. 15-day public comment period is published. The site is posted, and comments received are forwarded to the commission for their consideration. We did publish the public comment period. It happened March 14th through March 30th earlier this year. We did not receive any comments for or against or general testimony for this proposal. And then it's intended to be reviewed by the commission as a regular agenda item, which is why we're here tonight. The evaluation of the conformance of the proposal with the design guidelines is really the intent. And then the commission has about 3 different actions that are available to approval of the proposed development, approval subject to required modifications or conditions, or denial of the development proposal. And then once we're done tonight and one of those actions is rendered, there will be at some point in the future a final development review. Oftentimes there are slight modifications between the preliminary and the final stage where the applicant needs to come back and show those modifications, or maybe the commission has conditions that they need to review and make sure that was their intent when they made them. So this is the site plan that was submitted. You can see this is the northeast corner here. So this is 6th and Jackson where they converge. This is the Hello Walk, which extends in that southwesterly direction through the site. That essentially creates 2 triangular shaped pieces, one here and one here. Here's the parking lot. So there'll be access off of Jackson Street that goes through, crosses Hello Walk. There'll also be a proposed kind of shared access, provides through access to the property, the Silos property to the south. It ends up heading north and coming out on 6th Street as well. And so there's 25 spaces, 3 ADA accessible spaces in this parking lot. All the landscaping is consistent with the design guidelines as well as our parking lot standards. So we've got a tree every 40 feet, a shrub every 6 feet throughout the development. This is the refuse area where the dumpster will be located. And these are the building footprints. So this is a larger three-story building here to the northwest, and this is the smaller two-story building here to the south. These rectangles represent bike parking. So if you look through the staff report, you'll notice that there's a number of bicycle parking spaces that are required that are intended to delineate where they're located on the site. Like I mentioned before, Hello Walk extended through, and there's a small plaza area as well as streetscape improvements that have been made, and that was made about 2 years ago to this site. So as you can see, these are already in place along 6th Street, and they have the plaza here, and then it ends somewhere in here. The reason why they didn't extend all the way down to the southern edge of the property for the time being was that it was unsure where the approach was going to land here for what the future development of this site was going to be, and so that's why they ended the improvements here. But those are intended to be continued to the south and eventually all the way south down Jackson Street as well. So these are renderings of the proposed development. So this is from the 6th and Jackson intersection, looking to the southwest. This is the smaller 2-story building, and then the 3-story building here. The applicant envisioned some type of public art piece here at the plaza area, in that circular plaza. And then this would be Hello Walk extension that goes through the 2 buildings. And then there's the sky bridge that you can see behind the sign here. And then as well as the rooftop patio that could potentially be for a restaurant located on the 3rd floor. But the facade's primarily going to be brick. You see the which require the design guidelines, and then numerous entrances along the 6th Street frontage. To be a view from kind of Hello Walk, the southwest corner of the property looking to the northeast. So this would be the backside of the 3-story building. See the sky bridge there, which connects over to the 2-story building, and then portions of the parking lot. And then this would be looking kind of more of an aerial view from Jackson Street, looking to the northwest. And these are the floor plans that were submitted. So in the larger building, like I mentioned before, there's 4 commercial tenant spaces. So they just have these identified as building code occupancy. So this would be M occupancy in the larger space. So this is a little over 5,000 square feet in size. And then there's 3 tenant spaces, which are much smaller in size. This one's a little over 1,100 square feet. This one's around 500 square feet, and this one's a little over 800 square feet in size here. Then you have common corridors. There's an elevator, mechanical rooms. There's a stairwell here, and then a common corridor with bathrooms. Looks like unisex bathrooms that egresses back out onto the parking lot. And then the smaller building, you can see the tenant space. So assign that a B occupancy. And then there's stairs which leads up to the 2nd story, and then a restroom on the 1st floor of that building. So that brings us to the 2nd floor. You can see similar footprint with that tenant space over here in the smaller building. And then there'll be a landing and eventually a bridge that it ends up going across to the 3-story building. So looking at the 2nd floor of the 3-story building. So this is primarily a cooperative working arrangement where I think the applicant, Rusty, could speak to this a little bit more than I can, but it's more of just a shared cooperative work environment where you're able to lease out facilities, conference rooms, as well as offices. It's not necessarily one company. It's a number of smaller individuals or companies that rent the spaces and have a co-work environment. So you have a number of offices along this floor, and then you've got the room here on the corner. stairwells, elevators, and then restroom facilities here. So that just brings us to the third floor of the 3-story building. So it's primarily a restaurant being proposed here. So that'd be the A2 occupancy. You can see the seating, bar area, and then there'd be the rooftop patio, which goes over the sky bridge with another larger rooftop patio over here over the 2-story building. And then there would be pretty much a mixture of either studio or 1-bedroom apartments. There's 12 of them, which are proposed to be located on this floor. And then once again, there's the elevator, stairwells, and then a kind of a common bathroom facility, primarily to serve the restaurant use. So this is just a closer view of the rooftop patio space. It's about 1,300 square feet in size. And then this would be the typical 3rd floor residential unit. So this would be the entrance. There's a restroom area here, kind of a bed with sliding doors, kitchen area, and then the living area here. These are the elevations that were submitted. So this would be the west elevation. See a couple entrances. Kind of historic downlighting here, as well as on the 2nd floor. Pretty heavy roof cornices. Like I mentioned before, the proposed materials that is being constructed out of are multiple types of brick. Here's the north elevation as well as the southeast elevation. The southeast elevation would be adjacent to Hill Walk. North elevation would be adjacent to 6th Street. You can see the awnings, kind of an entry marquee awning here above the door. And then similar to what we just viewed with the downlighting, as well as heavy cornices and brick facade. So just to review the Hello Walk concept, it's really intended to provide, we have Hello Walk on campus in the admin building. It's really intended to provide this pedestrian bicycle connection between downtown to the university. And so we have these key pedestrian corridors throughout Legacy Crossing area. And this would be the Hello Walk corridor here that's shown. So it goes right through the site. And this was one of the reasons why the Urban Renewal Agency purchased this property was to facilitate the extension of Hello Walk from downtown to the campus. And so we've got a Hello Walk concrete detail here, which has shade trees, kind of a mixture of walkway accents with colored textured stamped kind of brick pavers and concrete 4-foot modular joints, and then historic lights throughout the corridor as well. So that detail is provided in the design guidelines. And then you can see they've mirrored that detail here, pretty much matched that, extending from the existing plaza area to the southwest, virtually the same alignment that we have shown within the document. So these would represent the trees here, and then these would be the historic light fixtures. Just a quick review of just the aspects of the design guidelines and whether or not they meet certain components or not. Building placement, we want all the buildings to be as close as possible to the street to really promote the pedestrian activity. And looking at, so within this development, it is within 5 feet of the property lines on sides. There is an option, so if there's intersections, so like it's set back a little bit from the northeast corner, the 6th and Jackson intersection, and that's mainly just to allow the building to open up towards the intersection as well as the visual sight distance and not have an issue with motorists and pedestrians for visibility at the intersection in the future. And so we do have allowances for that, and so we have this as meeting that requirement. And then but we do have another option of 20% of the building can be set back a maximum of 15 feet. Really doesn't apply the building's set essentially as close as it can to the property lines. Building height, minimum height is 20 feet or 2 stories, and the maximum is 60 feet or 5 stories. So like I mentioned before, one of the buildings is 3 stories, the other is 2 stories, so it meets this requirement, and it doesn't exceed the height limitation. Looking at the general building facade design, front facade shall include main entrance, number of transparent window openings. So as far as we can tell from the elevations and the renderings provided, it meets that requirement. It has the large transparent windows along the entire length, as well as the Hello corridor. There really are no blank walls on either of the facades on any of the sides. So it meets those requirements. Clear visual distinction. I think the windows provide that, as well as just the changing in colors and materials of the brick, as well as awnings on the first floor provide that distinction. So it should include solid surfaces and window openings to avoid the blank walls or glass curtains. So it's fairly evenly balanced on all facades, in our opinion. So meet that requirement. And then the rear and side are designed as similar elements. They look pretty much similar to the north and to the east facades. So we would view that as being met as well. And looking at window openings, requiring 50 to 85% of ground floor facades that front public streets and pedestrian ways should be occupied by windows or entry doors. Large transparent windows and doors occupancy. So when we did that calculation, it comes out to be about 50%. Which on the surface, you look at the elevations and it looks like there's really a lot of windows. But when you do the calculations, it comes out to be pretty much meeting it, but just barely. So, but it does meet it. And then windows and doors should utilize clear, transparent glass. So this is to, pretty much be able to view from the outside looking in and the inside looking out, eyes on the street. Type of concept, and looks like they are proposing to use transparent glass there on those windows, and there's no mirror tinted glass proposed. And then looking at all the other floors, has to be at least 20% of the total wall area, and doing that calculation, it came out to be about 40% of the wall area. And then projecting facade. So this is looking at the facade elements. Should be in keeping with the historic architecture within the community, including awnings and marquees. There are heavy roof cornices, brick masonry, solid concrete, metal awnings, consistent with the architecture within the downtown area. And then where buildings are adjacent to public streets or pedestrian ways, at least 75% with facade elements. So awnings, marquees, things of that nature. And so looking at that, it was approximately 75% of those facades contained those projecting elements. So they met it, but just barely. And then that brings us to facade articulation. Street facing building facades as well as facades in front of plaza or pedestrian ways should be articulated to improve the quality of the design. Appropriate methods are described within the design guidelines. So really just the proposals articulated by increasing and varying the window openings, recessing windows and entryways, kind of providing these vertical and horizontal expression lines between the floors and around the windows, and also incorporating those heavy roof cornices at the top. And looking at building materials, needs to be appropriate building materials from the list within the design guidelines, and brick, masonry, metal awnings, metal windows, doors, brick cornices are all acceptable building materials within the guidelines. And there are no inappropriate materials, and there's minimal painted surfaces on the exterior of the building. So it would meet all those requirements. Looking at the required off-street parking. So we have off-street parking requirements, and those fall back into the zoning code within the urban mixed commercial zoning district. And for a lot of commercial uses, there's no parking required within our zoning code for urban mixed commercial. And so really the parking comes into play for residential uses, but it's 50% of what is required normally by the code. So with those 12 dwelling units, those studio apartments, it's only going to be 1.25 parking spaces per unit that are required, and that comes out to be 8 spaces that are required as part of this development. But they are providing 25 parking spaces as part of their proposal. So well exceeding what's minimally required, but there are, fairly large spaces in between, in the buildings. Off-street parking placement really intended to, not be adjacent to the street, to the side, or to the rear of facilities. And so looking at the parking here, it's to the side of really both buildings and to the rear. So it would meet all kind of the design placement requirements of parking lots within the Legacy Crossing overlay. And there's no podium parking that's being provided, so that doesn't apply to this proposal. And then looking at landscape guidelines, like I mentioned before, this proposal meets all landscaping requirements and, meets all of our parking lot landscaping requirements in the zoning code as well. Per the design guidelines, just 5 canopy trees are required, 10 are provided, but most of those are required based upon our parking lot standards. There is a little bit greater of a parking lot like landscape strip between the parking lot and the adjacent right-of-way. Normally we would just require a 3-foot landscape buffer. In this circumstance, we require a 5-foot buffer for the Legacy Crossing design guidelines. So those are increased based upon the guidelines. And key public spaces, looking for those areas that are identified within the design guidelines as key public spaces to incorporate in the development. Really, the plaza that's already been constructed as part of the Urban Renewal Agency project previously is kind of that plaza entryway into Hello Walk. That really serves as the key public space for this development, as well as the extension of Hello Walk to the southwest corner of the property. And then looking at public art integration, I think it's a little too early to identify specifically what the public art is, but the applicant has an idea of incorporating something within the plaza area that's already been constructed. And that was really what the design guidelines contemplates is a location for the public art would be at that intersection. So people entering Hello Walk can enjoy it, as well as people at the intersection of 6th and Jackson. So I think we're on the right track there. And then stormwater management. We can go back to the site plan, but they're utilizing quite a few stormwater management practices within this development. They have, I think, 3 different stormwater storage systems. There's 2 in the parking lots, and then there's 1 in Hello Walk. 1 in Hello Walk utilizes pave drains, which are permeable concrete pavers, and then allows storage below that. So I think, I'm sure the applicant can talk a little bit more about that, but they're looking at some more of more innovative approaches to stormwater management as part of this proposal. And then that brings us to bike parking facilities. So we have a table within the design guidelines that requires a certain amount of bicycle parking. 24 bicycle parking spaces are required, and 24 are shown on the site plan, and they are of the same dimensions that are specified, at least 6 feet in length, and will have to be at least 2 feet in width there for a standard bicycle to fit. But they do meet the dimensions and show the accurate number of bicycle parking spaces on the site plan. So upon our review of the proposed project against the design guidelines, project is substantially within conformance of the guidelines, and staff would recommend approval of the proposed development for the preliminary project. And I'd certainly be able to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Second. Yes, Rob, you need to unmute.
Mike, on the utility layout plan, it shows a notation, future hello walk by others. Has that already been determined who's doing it, or would it be appropriate that it's done by the developer? Do you know what the plan is for that?
Well, it's going to be a requirement of this proposed development. So it's really going to be up to the urban renewal agency and the developer who is responsible for it. So as you can tell, like I covered earlier, we've got the plaza area at the northeast corner, I guess southwest corner of 6th and Jackson that's been constructed by the URA, as well as those streetscapes improvements. So it'll really just be up to the urban renewal agency board what they would like to do there as far as probably the negotiating price on the property and who's ultimately going to be responsible for constructing Hello Walk. But generally it would be required as part of this new development.
Yes, Rob.
Just a follow on to that, could we include that as a condition of approval?
Well, I mean, it's already pretty much a condition of approval that it is required as part of this development. You couldn't just build the buildings and not extend Hello Walk to the property. I think it would be in to move forward. I really hate to speculate what the urban renewal agency's opinion is as far as what they plan on negotiating in the future as to whether or not they're planning on covering that or not, and maybe Rusty could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Yes. Victor, maybe we'll ask Victoria Victoria, go ahead, and then we'll call on Rusty.
Okay, so I attend as an audience member all the Urban Renewal Agency meetings. So I followed this project when it was Sangria. I followed the project to date. Now I think it's the Urban Renewal Agency that actually constructs Hello Walk, and they're not going to construct it before construction is done because it would get all beat up in the process of construction. And there's still right-of-way issues and this, that, and the other thing. So I don't think it's the developer who does that, but I'm sure Rusty can answer that question. And I have, like I said, I attend the Urban Renewal Agency's meetings, and I saw the preliminary 2 applicants and their project designs, and what this one looks like originally, and then what it has grown into. And it vastly improved, in my opinion, from the original design. I think it looks really wonderful now, and has been very sensitive to the parking issues, and we're exceeding the parking here that's required. It's not just going to be a student apartment building with a few businesses. It's really a true mixed-use town and gown mixture, which is what the Keystone property is meant to be by the Urban Renewal Agency. So I'd throw that out. I do have one question, but that can wait for a while. But that might help with your Hello Walk. I think it's the Urban Renewal Agency that will complete that. But Rusty can answer that question.
Yes, Rusty, please go ahead and address that if you would.
I can only recall from conversations with the city that the URA is going to cover that cost, but it's pretty immaterial to the viability of the project.
Okay. Other comments or questions for either Mike Ray or Rusty Olds?
Okay, so I had a question.
Yes, go ahead, Victoria.
I'm remembering back when Sangria had their project, and they were having some kind of awning on that north side and ran into an issue with lighting the light fixtures and maybe the trees and getting in the way of the awning. and I think they did away with them or did away with some of them. So as far as that may just be your choice, but I thought I'd mention it as I'm thinking of it, that that might be something you need to think about. I don't know that we need to think about it, but maybe you do. Or you figured it out.
The trees are essentially a placeholder at this point. I do see the dilemma that you're talking about, and I don't think we have a final resolution. And it's difficult because one of the elements is obviously organic. So we have to know what these trees are going to look like, how they're going to spread, how they're going to be trimmed. It's really going to be a final stages part of the development.
Okay, sounds good.
Other comments or questions? I'm seeing that my internet is unstable here, so you may lose me. Anyway, is there someone else wanting to make a comment? I had a question for us, which is not completely relevant to the design. I think that, the design has some really nice aspects and to address the urban. You hear me? People hear me? That the design addresses the design guidelines, all of them well, I think. And that, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I think it does. In terms of economic purpose, I'm getting feedback. I'm wondering if there's an issue with all the office space, because I know the second floor that year for it was built, so I'm just wondering how you're going to address the issue in that space.
I don't know. The project has a little bit of economic cloud hanging over it right now. If I owned this building currently, I'd be paying my mortgage with grocery money, I suspect.
Right.
It's pretty devastating, honestly, this economic turn. And the project as it's designed, I think is a lot to get excited about in the economy of several months ago. And I just don't know, in terms of economic viability. I think I own other property and different kinds of property. And I think it's going to be a while before we know even what all the short-term impacts are going to be on the on real estate development in Moscow. So it's I'm discouraged, but I've been working on this for almost 2 years, and I'm heavily invested, and I want to see it happen, but not if I'm going to turn around and give it back to the bank.
Other comments or questions, or would anyone like to make a motion to approve the preliminary design?
Comment.
This phase? Pardon me?
Comment. I want to make
Yes,
a comment.
Victoria. Yes.
I'm pleased that Rusty hasn't given up the ghost yet. I know this is a really difficult time, and I'm certainly hopeful that things are going to come back, and that it is an exciting project. It has developed into an exciting project, and I would love to see it come to fruition. And of course, you're going to have to make economic decisions, but you haven't thrown in the towel yet, and I compliment you for that, and I thank you for that, because I want to see the whole city move forward and get out from under the black cloud. So I do want to say that.
Agreed. Other comments or questions?
This is Joel.
Entertain a motion to accept the proposal. Joel,
Joel, I'm
were
willing
you?
to make the motion.
I'm
to
getting a
accept.
lot of feedback.
I am
Okay,
willing to make
So-
the motion to accept.
go ahead.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. All in favor, raise your hands if you can. Yeah, and Mike, we lost you.
Yay.
But, yay. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Rusty, for the proposal. I think it's really going to be fun to see this go forward, and I hope that the stars are aligned and it will all work out for you. So
Thanks very much.
Okay, let's see. So we are now on the final item, which is just announcements. Are there any announcements from staff? We lost Mike Ray. I lost Mike Ray. I can't hear him.
None from
Oh,
staff.
there you are.
Yep.
None from staff. Sorry, Mike, I couldn't find. I realize that the Transportation Commission probably hasn't been meeting, just like most of our other commissions haven't been meeting, I believe. So, Mike, could you comment on what we can expect coming up and in terms of commission meetings and what might be, I know the second meeting in May has been canceled. Are we looking at a similar pattern in June, or what do you think? What can you see on the horizon at this point?
Well, yeah, all commission meetings that are not quasi-judicial or legislative were intended to be canceled for May. But I believe that we're still waiting for the word from, administration as to whether or not we're going to move forward with June. I think we've heard that June meetings are going to pretty much continue. So all the commissions will start to meet again in June, I believe, is what administration has told us. So.
Okay. Well,
Mike, question?
Everybody, please stay healthy. And I see, yes, was that you, Victoria, or somebody else?
Victoria.
I just wanted to ask Mike, when the June meetings take up again, will the public be able to sit in on council meetings and the commission meetings, or do you think they'll be Zoom like we are now?
I believe that we'll start to transition public meetings again without Zoom, I think is what they're planning on doing.
I miss the public.
Me too.
Okay, any other questions, or are we ready to adjourn? Thank you, everybody. Please stay healthy, and we'll see you probably in June.
Great seeing all of you.
Yeah. Nice to see you. And Rich, I don't think I had officially met you in person. I've joined by phone, and in February, so it's good to have you on board. And I think everybody else has been around for a while. So thank you. Bye-bye.